Hello, my name is Noah. I'm 25 and I deliver furniture for a living in a small town just outside Denver, Colorado. My days revolve around a beat-up delivery truck, a faded green uniform, and hauling sofas, tables, and bed frames to people's homes. It's not glamorous, but it pays the rent on my one-bedroom apartment, a cramped place with creaky floors and a fridge that hums too loud. I've got no big plans, no wild dreams, just a routine, wake-up drive, deliver, repeat. I never thought my life would take a turn sharp enough to make my heart race faster than when I'm late on a delivery. But it did, and it started in the most unexpected place, a Walmart parking lot. It was a Wednesday evening, the kind where the sky's turning purple and the air feels heavy with the day's heat. The Walmart lot was a zoo like always at that hour. People hustled past with overflowing bags, pushed rattling carts, or typed furiously on their phones, oblivious to the world. I'd just dropped off my last order of the day, a bulky sectional sofa that nearly broke my back, and was bone-tired, ready to head home. As I maneuvered the truck toward the exit, something glinted under the wheel of a parked SUV. I hit the brakes, hopped out, and crouched down. It was a woman's leather wallet, scuffed but intact. I flipped it open, a bank card, a few $20 bills, and a small photo of a woman in her mid-30s, her face framed by dark hair, her expression calm but tired. I scanned the lot and spotted her, the woman from the photo. She was maybe 50 feet away, heading toward a sleek sedan, a heavy grocery bag swinging from one hand, her eyes glued to her phone. She wore a wool coat over a blouse, her posture polished but weary, like she'd been running on fumes all day. Without thinking, I grabbed the wallet and jogged after her, my boots thumping against the asphalt. "Ma'am, you dropped this," I called, waving the wallet. Her name was Lisa. I'd learn later, 36 years old, reached for her car door just as my voice hit her. She spun around, her eyes wide with alarm. I was close now, maybe too close, and instinctively touched her shoulder to get her attention, holding the wallet out. "Your wallet," I started, but before I could finish, she screamed, "What are you doing?" "Let go. Are you trying to steal my purse?" The words hit like a slap. I froze, the wallet still in my hand, my mouth half open. "No, I'm just trying to give it back." I stammered, but she wasn't listening. Her face was pale, her hands trembling as she fumbled for her phone and dialed 911. "There's a man trying to rob me," she said, her voice shaking. I stood there dumbfounded as the world seemed to tilt. People in the lot turned to stare, their eyes boring into me like I was some kind of criminal. Within minutes, 2 police cars screeched into the lot, sirens blaring. A burly officer grabbed my arm, not rough but firm, and demanded the wallet. "I didn't do anything," I said, my voice tight. "I found it under a car and ran to give it back." Lisa clutched her grocery bag to her chest, her eyes darting between me and the officer. "I thought he was attacking me," she mumbled, her voice barely audible. "I just got away from a robbery." The officer took the wallet, checked my ID, and radioed for someone to pull the lot's security footage. Those were the longest 5 minutes of my life. I stood there, hands in my pockets, feeling every stare like a needle. Finally, the officer returned, his face softer but awkward. "Ma'am, the camera shows him picking up the wallet and running after you. No assault, no theft." Lisa's shoulders slumped. She looked at me, her eyes wet, but I couldn't meet her gaze. The humiliation burned too deep. "I told you," I said, my voice low, "I was just trying to help." The officer handed me back my ID, but the damage was done. I turned to Lisa, the words spilling out before I could stop them. "You were scared, fine. But what about me? You think I'm a thief because I'm some dirty delivery guy in a cheap uniform because I'm younger than you? You ever think I might just be a decent person?" She flinched, tears brimming. I'm sorry," she whispered, but it felt hollow. I shook my head, a bitter laugh escaping. "I gave you your wallet. We're done here. Stay away from me." I climbed into my truck, the door slamming harder than I meant. The engine roared as I pulled out, leaving her standing alone under the yellow glow of the lot's lights, her hands clutching the wallet like it was the only thing keeping her steady. I drove home, cracked open a beer, and sat in the dark. The sting of being seen as less than human cutting deeper than I wanted to admit. 3 weeks after the Walmart parking lot fiasco, the sting of Lisa's accusations still clung to me, like grease on my work gloves. I couldn't shake the memory of her wide-eyed panic, the way she'd branded me a thief without a second thought. It wasn't just the police or the staring crowd, it was the way her fear had reduced me to nothing but a scruffy delivery guy in a faded uniform. I buried myself in work, hauling furniture from dawn to dusk, trying to outrun the humiliation. Every time I passed that Walmart, my jaw tightened, and I swore I'd never let anyone make me feel that small again. It was a chilly Thursday afternoon in late October, the kind where the air smells like dry leaves and oncoming winter. I'd picked up a last-minute delivery, a dining table, and 6 chairs to a fancy condo complex on the outskirts of Denver. The address screamed money-gated entrance, manicured lawns cars that cost more than my yearly rent. I double-checked the order, not wanting any hassle, and pulled my rattling truck into the lot. The client was in Unit 24B. I grabbed my clipboard, slung my tool bag over my shoulder, and headed to the elevator, my boots leaving faint dirt marks on the polished floor. When I rang the bell, the door swung open and my stomach dropped. There she was, Lisa, standing in the doorway, her dark hair tied up in a loose bun, wearing a gray sweater and jeans. Her eyes widened, mirroring my own shock. "You're the delivery guy?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, like she was hoping I wasn't real. I swallowed hard, forcing my face to stay neutral. "Yeah," I said, my tone flat. "Dining set for 24B. Want to check the pieces before I bring them up?" I held up the clipboard, keeping my distance, my body language screaming. I wasn't here for small talk. Lisa hesitated, her fingers twisting the hem of her sweater. Sure, she mumbled, but she didn't move. I turned to the truck, unloading the table legs and chairs with mechanical precision, my mind racing. Of all the people in this city, why her? I hauled the pieces to her door, set them inside, and started assembling, focusing on the screws and brackets like they were the only things that mattered. She hovered nearby, watching, her silence louder than any apology. I was packing up my tools, ready to bolt when she spoke. "Noah, wait," she said, her voice soft but urgent. I froze my back to her, the sound of my name on her lips catching me off guard. "I owe you an apology for what happened at Walmart. I was scared out of my mind and I didn't think. I'm so sorry." I turned slowly, my eyes meeting hers. Her face was open, earnest, but I wasn't ready to let it go. "You're not the first person to assume the worst about me," I said, my voice low. "People see the uniform, the truck, and they think I'm trouble." But it hurt, Lisa. It hurt a lot. She looked down, her cheeks flushing. "I know," she said. "I've thought about it every day since. I was wrong, and I hate that I made you feel like that." Her words hung in the air, heavy with regret. I wanted to stay angry, to walk away and keep her in the box labeled a mistake, but something in her eyes, raw, unguarded, made me pause. I slung my tool bag over my shoulder, ready to leave, but she spoke again. "Can I make it up to you? A glass of water, maybe? Or, if you're not in a rush, dinner." Her voice wavered, like she was bracing for rejection. I studied her for a long moment. The Lisa in front of me wasn't the frantic woman from the parking lot. She was nervous, vulnerable, trying to bridge a gap she'd created. Part of me wanted to say no, to protect myself from whatever this was. But another part, the part that still stung from being misjudged, wanted to see if she meant it. "Just water," I said, finally, my voice softer but still guarded. "I've got other stops." She nodded, a flicker of relief crossing her face, and gestured toward the kitchen. I followed, my boots heavy on her hardwood floor, wondering what the hell I was getting myself into. Lisa handed me a glass of water, the ice clinking softly as I took it. Her condo's kitchen was pristine, white cabinets, marble counters, a faint smell of lemon cleaner, but it felt lived in, not sterile. A few framed photos sat on a shelf, Lisa, with a young boy, no man in sight. We moved to the living room, sitting across from each other on plush gray chairs. The silence wasn't heavy, but it wasn't comfortable either, like we were both waiting for the other to break it. I sipped the water, my eyes on the glass, still unsure why I'd stayed. "I meant what I said." Lisa started, her voice steady but careful. "I've been kicking myself about that day in the parking lot. It wasn't just fear. I judged you before I knew you." She leaned forward, her hands clasped. "I'm not that person, Noah. At least I don't want to be." I set the glass down, my fingers tracing the condensation. "I get it," I said. "You were scared. But you're not the only one who's had a rough day. I've had customers slam doors in my face, call me names, assume I'm there to scam them. All because I'm young, because I drive a beat-up truck, because I'm not wearing a suit. That day you were just another name on the list." Her face tightened, like my words had stung. "I'm sorry," she said again, softer this time. "Can you tell me what it's like, your life, I mean? I want to understand." I hesitated. Nobody ever asked me that, not really. Customers saw me as a pair of hands to move their furniture, not a person with a story. But Lisa's eyes were steady, waiting like she actually cared. So I talked. I told her about the long hours hauling dressers up staircases, the way my back ached by Friday, the pride I took in fixing a wobbly table just right. I told her about the looks I got, like I was less than when I walked into fancy neighborhoods like hers. People think I don't have dreams. I said, my voice quieter. But I do. I want to open my own auto shop someday. It's just hard to believe in yourself when everyone else writes you off. Lisa nodded her gaze, never leaving me. I know that feeling, she said. Not the same way, but I get it. She took a breath, then started talking. She was a sales manager for a retail chain, always on call, always putting out fires. She'd been divorced for 3 years, her ex-husband raising their son in Arizona. I only see him a few months a year, she said, her voice catching. It's like losing a piece of myself every time he leaves. She paused, then added, and being a woman alone, you learn to keep your guard up. That day at Walmart, I'd just gotten a creepy text from a client. I saw you running toward me and I just snapped. I leaned back, the tension in my chest loosening. For the first time, I saw her not as the woman who'd called the cops on me, but as someone carrying her own weight. That sounds rough, I said. I didn't know. How could you? She said with a small smile. I didn't give you a chance. The conversation shifted after that, like a knot slowly unraveling. We talked about little things, her love for old jazz records, my habit of blasting rock playlists on long drives. She laughed when I described a delivery gone wrong where I'd gotten stuck in a client's muddy driveway for an hour. I grinned when she admitted she burned toast every morning. The room felt warmer, the distance between us shrinking. I glanced at the clock and realized I'd been there almost an hour, way longer than I'd planned. I should go, I said, standing. Got an early route tomorrow. Lisa stood too, walking me to the door. Thanks for staying, she said, her voice soft. I didn't think you would. I shrugged, a half smile tugging at my lips. Didn't think I would either. I stepped into the hallway, my tool bag heavy on my shoulder, but my heart felt lighter than it had in weeks. As the elevator doors closed, I caught myself thinking about her smile, the way it lit up her face when she talked about music. It wasn't attraction, not yet, just a flicker of something I couldn't name. For the first time since that awful day in the parking lot, I didn't feel like the guy who'd been misjudged. I felt like Noah, someone worth listening to. And as I climbed into my truck, the engine rumbling to life, I wondered if I'd see her again, not as a delivery guy, but as someone she might actually know. The conversation at Lisa's condo stuck with me longer than I expected. Her apology, her willingness to listen, the way she'd opened up about her life, it all felt like a door cracking open just enough to let a little light in. A few days later, she texted me a simple, "Thanks for the talk. You're good at your job, by the way." I stared at the message, unsure how to reply. Part of me wanted to keep my distance to avoid getting tangled in whatever this was. But another part, the part that remembered her laugh. Her jazz records typed back, "No problem. Glad the table's holding up." It was neutral safe, but it kept the door open. Over the next few weeks, Lisa found small reasons to reach out. She'd text about a flickering light in her hallway, asking if I could take a look. I'd swing by after work, toolbox in hand, and fix it in 10 minutes. She'd offer coffee, and we'd end up talking for an hour about nothing and everything: her stressful clients, my worst delivery stories, the way Denver's winters hit harder than we were ready for. The awkwardness from our first encounters faded, replaced by an easy rhythm, like we were two people who'd known each other longer than we had. One Saturday, she called me out of the blue. "I'm heading to the grocery store," she said, her voice light. "Want to come? I could use a second pair of hands." I hesitated, my boots still dusty from a morning delivery. Grocery shopping with her felt personal, like crossing a line I hadn't meant to draw. But I said yes, mostly because I was curious about who she was when she wasn't apologizing or explaining herself. We met at a supermarket downtown, the kind with overpriced organic apples and too many kinds of milk. Lisa pushed the cart, her hair loose under a knit cap, her coat buttoned against the November chill. I carried the heavy stuffed bags of potatoes, a case of water, while she debated between brands of pasta. "You're quiet today," she said, glancing at me as we navigated the cereal aisle. "Something on your mind?" I shrugged, tossing a box of oatmeal into the cart. Just not used to this. Hanging out, you know. Most people don't invite their delivery guy to shop. She laughed, the sound bright and unguarded. You're not just the delivery guy, Noah. I don't know, someone I like talking to. Her words caught me off guard and I felt my face warm. We kept moving, but the air between us shifted like we were both aware of something unspoken. At the checkout, she insisted on paying for a coffee I'd grabbed. My treat, she said, smiling, for being my pack mule. The next week, she invited me to a movie at a small theater in town, some black and white classic I'd never heard of. I went half expecting it to feel like a date, but it didn't. It felt like two friends comfortable in each other's silence, sharing popcorn and whispering about the cheesy dialogue. Afterward, we grabbed burgers at a diner and she told me about her son Ethan, who lived with his dad in Arizona. He's 10, she said, her eyes softening. Loves soccer, hates math. I miss him every day. I listened, not pushing, just letting her share the weight of it. Then came the night of her friend's birthday party. Lisa texted, "It's at my place. Low-key, just a few people. Come if you're free." I almost said no, parties weren't my thing, especially not with her polished friends, but I showed up wearing my least worn flannel and a nervous grin. The crowd was small, mostly women her age, sipping wine and laughing over old stories. Lisa introduced me as Noah, my friend, who saves me from broken lamps. I braced for side eyes, but they welcomed me, asking about my job, joking about their own home repairs. I relaxed, sipping a beer, stealing glances at Lisa as she moved through the room, her smile effortless. When the party wound down, she handed me a foil container with a slice of cake. For surviving my friends, she said, her eyes playful. I laughed, leaning against her kitchen counter. They're not so bad, but yeah, cake makes it worth it. She stepped closer, her voice quieter. I'm glad you came, Noah. It means a lot. I looked at her, the fluorescent light softening the lines on her face. She wasn't the woman from the Walmart lot anymore, or even the nervous one from our first talk. She was Lisa, funny warm, someone who saw me as more than a guy with a toolbox. As I left, cake in hand, I realized I wasn't just her handyman or her friend. I was someone she trusted, and that felt like something worth holding on to. The weeks after Lisa's friend's birthday party felt different, like the air between us had settled into something steady, something real. We weren't just two people who'd stumbled into each other's lives anymore. We were friends, maybe more, though neither of us had dared to name it. She'd text me about her day. I'd swing by to fix a creaky cabinet, and we'd end up laughing over coffee or splitting a pizza. I started looking forward to her messages, to the way her voice softened when she said my name. But I didn't let myself think too far ahead. Life had a way of pulling the rug out when you got too comfortable. One rainy November night, my phone lit up with a text from Lisa. You busy, feeling kind of alone tonight? It was past 9 and I was sprawled on my couch, half watching a game, a warm beer in hand. The words hit me harder than I expected. I knew that kind of loneliness, the kind that creeps in when the world gets too quiet. I grabbed 2 cans of beer from the fridge, pulled on a jacket, and drove to her condo, the rain drumming on my truck's windshield. When she opened the door, she looked different, smaller somehow, in an oversized sweater, her hair loose and slightly damp. You didn't have to come, she said, but her eyes said otherwise. I held up the beers, figured you could use some company. She smiled, stepping aside to let me in. We settled on her couch, the city lights blurred through the rain-streaked window. The beer sat unopened on the coffee table. Neither of us was in the mood to drink. The room was warm, filled with the faint hum of a heater and the patter of rain outside. Lisa curled her legs under her, staring at the window. You ever think about that day at Walmart? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, leaning back. Hard to forget. Not every day you get mistaken for a crook. I meant it as a joke, but it came out heavier than I planned. She turned to me, her face tight with regret. I was so wrong, Noah. I've hated myself for it. But you didn't hold it against me forever. Why, I thought about it, my fingers tracing the seam of the couch. I was mad, I said. Still am sometimes. But I've been judged my whole life by customers, bosses, strangers. If I held on to every slight, I'd be carrying a mountain. Besides, you owned up to it. That's more than most people do. Her eyes softened and she reached out, her hand resting lightly on mine. You're a better person than I was that day, she said. I didn't see you then. Not really. But I do now. The weight of her words settled over me warm and unfamiliar. Nobody had ever looked at me the way she did, like I was more than a guy who moved furniture more than a kid in a worn-out uniform. I turned my hand, lacing my fingers with hers, the gesture feeling as natural as breathing. "You make me feel seen, too," I said, my voice low. "Like I'm not just nobody." She smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek. "If I'd been braver that day, if I'd stopped to ask who you were, things might have been different." Maybe, I said, squeezing her hand. "But we're here now. That's what counts." We sat there, hands entwined, the rain a soft rhythm outside. We didn't talk about the future, about what we were or could be. We didn't need to. The moment was enough, her warmth, her honesty, the way she looked at me like I was someone worth knowing. I thought about the gap between us, 11 years, different lives, different worlds. But it didn't feel like a gap anymore. It felt like a bridge built from apologies and late-night talks, from grocery runs and shared laughs. Lisa leaned her head against my shoulder, her breathing steady. "Thank you," she whispered, "for giving me a chance." I rested my cheek against her hair, the scent of her shampoo faint and comforting. "Thank you for giving me one too." We stayed like that until the rain slowed, the city quiet beyond the glass. Our story wasn't a fairy tale, no grand gestures or promises of forever. It was simpler, messier, more honest. A connection born from a mistake, nurtured by forgiveness, and held together by the kind of understanding that doesn't need words. I didn't know where we'd go from here, but I knew I wanted her in my life, not as a stranger or a client, but as someone who saw me, scars and all. And as I drove home that night, the roads slick and shining, I felt something I hadn't in years, the quiet certainty that I wasn't alone anymore.